What is up, everyone? My name is Alex, aka Doer, and we are back with another episode of Doers Take Breaks, where we invite a guest, talk all things MMA, and jump into the world of art and collectibles. Today, I have the pleasure to sit down with Gian Galang, an artist and illustrator from New York. If that name doesn't ring a bell, I bet some of his artwork will. He has created artwork for clients including the UFC, Nike, Reebok, Vice, ESPN, HBO, Criterion, and Everlast, and that's just to name a few. Most recently, GM was able to fulfill one of his dream projects when he was called upon by the UFC to create a UFC 300 mural. So please believe that we're going to jump into how that collaboration came to be, the pressure to deliver such a big piece, and his overall joy for the sport. But first, GM, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time. How are you today?
Dude, I'm great. Thank you so much for that epic intro.
Of course, of
I
course.
let you down.
Not a problem. So, look, where I want to start is I want to give people a taste of your personality, a taste of your own taste. So, my research tells me that some of your inspiration for training martial arts as a kid came from old games and some comic books. So, I thought we could start off with some questions that are driven off of that. The
Yeah.
first game that we're going to play, it doesn't really have an official name, but we're going to call it Who Wins and Why. So the first universe that we're going to visit is Street Fighter. And I want to know, if Ryan and Ken had to fight each other, who would win and why?
Well, yeah,
Ryu. Did I
my
say
guy.
Ryu? I
Yeah,
apologize. Ryu and Ken.
yeah, Ryu's my guy because he's always training. It seems like he's training a little bit more than Ken. I feel like Ken's partying a little bit. So,
He's a party animal. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. What about Chun-Li versus Sakaru? Who do we got here?
Uh, Chun-Li, because same thing. I think Sakura's like she's like a little kid. She's still got more training to do.
All right. In some of the older versions, she's actually, her storyline has progressed, I've seen.
Okay.
But I hear you. I hear you. Okay, what about Vega versus Zangief?
Dang, you know what? Back then I would have. Well, you know what? It's Vega because he has swords on his hands. You know what I'm talking about? You can't miss with that.
All right, so we're gonna jump over to Mortal Kombat, that universe now. What about Liu Kang versus Kung Lao?
um, Luke Kang because he's inspired by Bruce Lee, so Bruce Lee always wins.
There we go. Sub-Zero versus Scorpion.
Ooh, let me see, Scorpion, because I feel like he always goes for the kill. Sub Zero, you might just get frozen. So,
Okay. Or he might just freeze in the moment. All right, what about Sonya Blades versus Kitana?
um, I feel like Katana because Sonya Blade seems like a normal human, and Katana it seems like a demon or something. So,
All right, all right. So now we're going to jump into the MCU. And where I want to go with this is, if you had an opportunity to create a comic book artwork for one of the MCU characters, but could only choose one character, who are you choosing and why? And because there's so many in there, I had four options here listed, but you're welcome to pass on these. So Spider-Man, Iron Man, Deadpool, or Wolverine. Those were some of the ones that really stood out to me.
definitely Wolverine. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
okay.
Wolverine. Yeah, that's. I mean, I feel like that's like the ultimate character energy that I could like associate with, and yeah, been able to work on some official Wolverine stuff with Fortnite and actually with Marvel. I did an official print with Sideshow.
Really? Okay, so we're gonna have to pull that up here as well. Very cool. So one more I'm gonna toss in there because I think this one you'll enjoy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
What turtle would you most relate to and why? Donatello, Raphael, Leonardo, or Michelangelo?
Well, so my full name is Gian Angelo. So I always rock with Michelangelo.
All
Um,
right.
Even
I
though now
love it.
I think about it, I guess maybe I'd be more like a rap guy, but I've always been Michelangelo.
I like it. I like it. Well, with that context, I want to jump into inspiration for training and watching mixed martial arts. We now know that some of that earlier content as a child inspired some of this, but one that I don't want to brush over, a big inspiration for you, you tossed this in already,
Yeah.
Bruce Lee. So why don't you tell me about some of your earliest memories of watching his movies, and how much living in Hong Kong till the age of 10 amplified his influence.
Yeah. So, um, what I've said before is, I feel like rather than being inspired directly by Bruce Lee, I was inspired by all the things that were inspired by Bruce Lee. So, like Mortal Kombat, the Ultimate Tournament, inspired by Enter the Dragon, all the fighting games, Street Fighter. Michelangelo wouldn't have nunchucks if it wasn't,
For
for
Bruce
Bruce
Lee.
Lee.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up in Hong Kong, Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee were cultural icon. I feel like probably the most famous stars. I mean, at least you know that I can remember. Um,
Yeah.
I lived there until I was 10. So for me, they weren't even like martial arts movies. They're just like movies,
Yeah.
So,
It was the way to operate your life under.
yeah. Like, especially so when I was growing up, Jackie Chan was making like I don't know, at least like two movies a year. It's just like Jackie Chan movies all the time, and so for me, martial arts and uh, regular art have always been intertwined because I was always, drawing what the characters that I loved, whether it was on movies or comic books or fighting games, like you were saying, and it just
Yeah,
all
yeah.
happened martial arts related. It's not like I didn't think I was going into a niche like, oh, I really like the martial arts things. It was just like Ninja Turtles was the most popular thing. Street Fighter was the most popular thing. Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee was the most popular thing. So that's just like what I like.
That's naturally what you gravitated towards, because it was also so presented there as well. Talk to me about what age you pick up Muay Thai, and also if there was ever competitions that you did from that, or were you just training to stay in shape?
Well, I mean, I have fought amateur Muay Thai, but
Okay.
that was like maybe over 5 years ago, and I still do Muay Thai now. Just
That's still pretty recent, though. Oh, that's not that long ago. Yeah.
yeah. But I still work out, but it's more just to stay in shape. But I was a karate kid, so uh, one thing I remember when I was a kid, I had a subscription to this Ninja Turtles magazine, and
Okay.
it had one of the features was just like all these kids that were black belts, and they were just like
Mm.
breaking boards, and I was like, oh, dude, I need that. I was like, that's what I want to be. So I did karate when I was a kid, and then I found Muay Thai. I discovered Muay Thai when I was in college, and that's kind of what I've been working on. I mean, working out ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's pretty that's much later into, your life. So you did karate since what age till college days? When did you pick up
Probably,
karate?
like 11, 10 or 11. Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah. I lived in Hong Kong until I was 10, and then I
Yeah.
moved here to karate. Yeah, I just
Very
took,
cool.
I just took Chuck Norris karate because
Chuck
I love
What is Chuck Norris karate?
go, and it's basically a mix of all the things that Chuck Norris knew. So it was about, I would say, 80% Tang Sudo, which is basically the Korean form of Shotokan,
Okay.
basic, blocks and all, like karate stuff. And then he was also a BJJ black belt, so we would do like super basic BJJ, and then I don't know. We also had some random, some like uh, you know, escape. Like if someone has a knife, you gotta go like this. So
What to do, where to hit them, pressure
yeah.
points.
So when I moved here, I grew up in Virginia, so that was like the type of karate that they had in Virginia.
Okay, got it, got it. And so while you're doing karate and then you pick up Muay Thai, at what point does the UFC hit your radar?
Oh, man, I don't even remember. Well, actually, I think UFC was like in college, no, in high school, middle school. It's like whichever one of my friends had the internet, like
Yeah.
it would just be, just for my guy friends. Oh, did you see this fight? This fight,
Okay.
the UFC fight. So it was more like I always knew about the UFC. We'd always watch these random one-off fights that people would download,
Yeah.
and I would say I really got into it. I mean, I definitely remember watching UFC 100 in college.
Okay. Yep.
I'm in college. Um, But I feel like I really got into it when I moved to New York, and I was like a professional, grown up. And I remember, Machida. So remember, I told you I was a karate kid, and Machida was like on the scene, and I was like, oh my god, it's a karate guy. And I feel like that's kind of when I started following it more, you know, consistently.
Machida was underappreciated in my opinion in the UFC.
Oh yeah,
I absolutely enjoyed Machida and I loved his run to the title.
yeah,
And then at the same time, I thought Shogun did beat him the first time they fought
yeah,
for the
yeah,
title.
yeah,
So it brought me joy for Shogun that he was able to get it done in the second fight. But then Machida took some really tough L's against some obviously high level competition, Jones specifically, right?
yeah.
One of the most
Oh,
wicked wicked walkaway submissions of all time. But
yeah,
yeah, Machida is definitely someone that I felt like he came into the UFC a little older, so maybe that's why his time there was a little bit short lived. But I can appreciate that answer.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like that whole all the guys during that era was. I think I was like the most like really heavily invested. Like I really love Rashad too. So I was kind of it's kind of like
Mhm.
bittersweet when he lost too. I was like, oh, because I like Machida and I really like Rashad, especially coming off of the
Yeah.
Ultimate Fight. But yeah, all those guys.
Is
Yeah,
Machida one of your earliest memories of the UFC? Like a fighter that you said, I'm going to become a fan of this fighter, or was there somebody even before that?
yeah. I think so because when you know I can't really remember following any kind of pop culture super consistently throughout college. Like even
Yeah.
I forget movies. Like some people are
Okay.
like, "Oh yeah, this movie came out," and I'm like, "I was in college, I guess." Like
I
I
can't do it that way either. I'm horrible
yeah,
at timing it that way. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like stuff in college. I don't know. Either I was like drawing too much, or like, um, you know, doing college stuff as
Yeah.
opposed to now it's like what's streaming now, like what's I know this trilogy that's been going, but so I feel like when I moved to New York, and I was like a professional and stuff like that, that's when me and my roommates would like, oh, the fight's on now, and then we watch something
Yeah.
on Saturday night, and then so I think about around like 2009 2010.
Very cool. Have you been to a live event prior to, we'll say even prior to officially getting commissioned to do anything with the UFC?
Yeah, so you know what? I've been lucky because I've been like able to work with so many brands and stuff. I feel like I've only like paid to go to an event one time, and it was when they were in Newark. Who was fighting? Dillashaw and Henan Barrow, and
Okay.
um,
Oh, yeah. Jacare.
Jacare was fighting. But it was in Newark, New Jersey, and then
Yeah.
me and my roommate had binoculars and stuff like that.
Oh, you guys are that far.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch, dude. Especially, yeah, we were all. I can't remember what year that was, but that was like our first UFC that we went to. Yeah.
Dillashaw's fun. I've seen him live. I've never seen Jacare live, but another guy that I absolutely enjoyed watching. What Holland did to him. I mean, I'm really good at recalling fights, and
Okay.
Jacare, yeah, that Holland fight when he fought Jacare, that was a tough way to see Jacare get KO'd. Um, all right, so where I want to go with this now is let's go to what age you decide that you want to make art a career path. Like how does, because that's one of those where you either have family being very supportive of it, right, or not supportive at all.
Yeah.
So you just talk to me about like if you remember that age to say that this is what I want to pursue, and then you go to college in Virginia for this as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, art was always my thing. That's like I was actually good at school too. Like I had a high
Hmm.
GPA and stuff, but like art was like I was like the art guy. Like oh this is Gian can draw. Oh he can
Yeah.
draw this and stuff like that. And everybody asked me to draw like tons of things in their yearbooks and stuff like that. So that was like my thing. But I didn't. Um, I just didn't have any reference for what to do as a career.
Hmm.
Like I was into comics and stuff like that, but I didn't even think about being a comic book artist. That didn't even like really run through my mind. But I was always like in art class, we got to do the still life. I want to spend the longest time on the still life, or we got to draw a portrait. So I was always good at just the art stuff, or I
Mhm.
just be into it more than other people. Um, but I didn't know it was, I didn't think about it as a career. But then, luckily for me, the college I was going to go to, Virginia Commonwealth University, was they specialized in medicine and art. And
Okay.
my parents wanted me to be a doctor, dentist, something like that. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go, and I got a scholarship to VCU actually for my
Okay.
art. So um, I was like, I'll take all the pre med required classes and the art classes in the first year. So I have like a first year to decide, so I can split off. And then after
Right.
that first year, I was like, yeah, I want to do art. What's so great about college is, especially a good art college, is you do get exposed to all the different paths. Like at the end of the year, so the first year was kind of weird because all art kids have to take an art foundation, which makes sense. It's just like because it's kids that like me that are good at art, but you're just coming from high school. You all you know about is like pottery and like oil painting and stuff like that and
Yeah.
old stuff. And our art school had 7 art departments. So, but you all have to go through art foundation. So at the end of the year, each of the departments gives a presentation of what they do. So there's like kinetic imaging, which is like animation. There was graphic design, fine art, and I was really drawn to illustration. I was like, oh, this is what I like. It's just like
Yeah.
they showed. So I knew I liked illustration because of comic books, because it's kind of illustration, but it's very like kind of specific niche of illustration. But I was drawn to like the great painters, which more figurative.
Yeah.
The illustration is more generally more figurative. So um, that's what I was drawn to. And at the end of that first year of college, I would say I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this thing. Yeah.
That's when you made the decision. What did your parents have to say about it at that time?
I mean, they're fine. Yeah, they're fine. Yeah, it's like I got the scholarship to go to college because
Yeah.
of my art, so and grades or whatever. So I was like, I'm gonna do art. This is my thing. Yeah.
I hear you. So, there is a professor that I'm going to touch on in a few questions, but where I want to go first is talk to me about, and this could have been in college or maybe post college as you start to enter the actual work field, but any early obstacles that you can recall as you were trying to, get yourself grounded and set yourself up for success.
Yeah. So one of the things in college was there were so many avenues of art that I was into. So I actually ended up double majoring in graphic design and illustration. Graphic design because I actually had an uncle and a cousin who were graphic designers, and I didn't know what that was when I was. I knew they were graphic designers when I was not in college yet, but when
Hmm.
I actually fell in love with graphic design. We had a great graphic design program at VCU, so I was really into that. And then I was also very into illustration. And when I was a junior, yeah, junior, an art director from Nike's advertising agency came and gave a talk, and he
Okay.
showed like, all kinds of cool stuff that I was into, like illustrated, animated music videos. They had like these dope Nike ads with like awesome layouts and graphic design, and it just seemed like there was so much going on uh, in that industry. Um,
Hmm.
and so I found myself into like in that field. I eventually became an art director in advertising for 7 years, working on stuff like that. So um, yeah, so I forgot what the question was.
Obstacles. So you get that you're like that looks like where I want to go to, but just early obstacles that
Oh,
made it, yeah, that almost like challenged you, made you question like, did I make the right choice?
so when I was yeah, so when I had that route, I was fine, and I loved advertising for a while, and um, I could still do advertising because it's fun because there's you're always working on different things.
Hmm.
Um, I'm working with like top creatives across all media, so it's always interesting. You're always like, oh, who's this latest director? Who's this latest photographer? Maybe we can collaborate with them to make this. But um, what I found when I was in advertising was that I really loved painting and drawing like the most. Like if I
Hmm.
had to spend most of my time doing something. That's what I want to do. So I would say the first obstacle was like, how do I leave my advertising like madman job to just like do artwork, for myself. I mean, or for other people, and just live, be able to live. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but I kind of got around that obstacle by just like kind of doing the training wheels, which was basically I did freelance stuff on the side and personal projects for almost 3 years while I was in advertising. So I
Wow.
was just even like, you know, I do my advertising job, and then I would just like stay later at the office and do, you know, fan art, little editorial gigs and stuff like that. And I just built it up until it wasn't sustainable. Like I would either have to turn down projects um, or quit my job. So that
I mean,
was
that's definitely powerful insight because right, like you were doing your full time job and then you gave yourself a partial, a part time job on top of that to then even it out and make that jump right. Like what you were doing at your 9 to 5, maybe you enjoyed 20% of it, and you were trying to find a way to take that 20 and make it 100% of the time,
yeah.
right?
Well, I'll tell you what. It was hard. It was harder than that because I liked it more than 20%. Because
Mhm.
yeah, being an advertising agency, being at an advertising agency, especially a
Mhm.
very creative one, is is always exciting. You're always working on different things, but yeah, so that's what really made it so tough. If it was 9 to 5 that I was like, I hate this, like that's it's
Mhm.
easy, and also like um, I think in any creative field, the more you like something, the more like extra hours you put into it. So it's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
like I could just do like my 9 to 5 at like whatever a regular job, and then I'm like I'm
yeah,
done, and then let me go draw this. It's like I'm working on this, and I'm trying to come up with more ideas for this thing. So it really was a struggle for that 3 years, like
yeah.
and and also like yeah, it was almost like I have it great, and I could see myself keep going, but
Yeah, I mean,
that
7 years. 7 years is a good amount of time. And if I'm correct about this, that industry is very tight on deadlines, right? Like it's
oh
almost
yeah.
like projects come up the week of or 2 weeks out. So even you wanting to do your own passion stuff outside of it, it's kind of like contingent on what other fires you have to put out first.
Oh yeah, advertising is all about last minute. I mean
Yeah,
it's everything. So actually that,
yeah.
and I think it trained me a lot to be independent.
Hmm.
It
Absolutely.
prepared me so much to be just an independent artist. So yeah.
Yeah, and so did your when you were doing your passion projects outside of work, taking I wouldn't even say the commissions that you took, it was more like your artwork. If you were spending your own time trying to get your craft to another level, did it always gravitate towards sports, or did you also dabble in anything else? Did you say like maybe it's one of these two or one of these three, and we'll see which one sticks?
Well, so what happened was like my early just experiments just took off right away, and it was
Okay.
MMA, and it was because of the MMA community. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if I was into you know football or something like that, it wouldn't have I wouldn't have had so many opportunities. Like, I did like a little UFC fan art, and I posted it on my Tumblr,
Mm-hmm.
hashtag, and that first one got on MMA Reddit and Twitter, and then I did another one that um, I did like a fan poster of like Mark Hunt, and he made his that artwork his like Facebook profile picture,
Oh,
and it's
nice.
so fast, like because the MMA community is so tight online, especially.
It's tight. It's not as saturated the way you said, like for football, right? Like football, there's so much. So it's still a young sport. So you came
Especially,
in at the right time,
yeah, especially when I was doing just that stuff like over 10 years ago or something like that.
and it
Um,
doesn't hurt when your artwork's actually really good, right? Like that. That it's
No,
not.
it was good. I mean, I felt I was always I felt I was always good, and I did good in college and stuff. But it's different. It's
Well,
different
yeah,
from
you look back. I'm sure you look back at any of your work, right? And you're like, I can do a million things better. I bet some scary way you're gonna look back at your 300 mural and still find all these, holes you can poke in it. But I think that's just a product of an artist in general and somebody that wants to improve in what they do, every day.
yeah. I mean, so um, Yes. So just to finish,
Yeah.
thought was um, because my early stuff took off, I very soon got the opportunity with Vice Fightland to
Hmm.
do just editorial illustrations, and that was while I was still developing. But it was such a great way to develop because, first of all, editorial illustration is fast, right? It's probably like the fastest thing. And I wouldn't even say what I was doing was editorial illustration because um, I didn't have a specific brief or a deadline to hit. It was basically like, um, who's fighting next? I'll just do like a picture of them,
Yeah.
and they were like, that's cool, because
That works. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of like online editorial illustration budget is like not a lot. So
Okay.
it was
Okay.
just like, oh, that's cool. This guy can, he's cool. He like he's an illustrator. He wants to do MMA stuff. Whatever, we'll put out. So I had that. That was like holding me accountable. So I'd be like,
Yeah.
so I would just try different things, and I didn't have to think. It wasn't concept driven. It was just like cool pictures, which is
Yeah.
cool portraits, which is what I love anyway. So
Yeah.
um, that's I was so lucky again to be able to develop that way, as opposed to just like maybe I'm taking a year and just making these artworks and nobody's seeing them. I put out like an oil painting of Ronda Rousey, and they put on it's on Vice, boom, 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 huge. And then I do like a colored pencil of something else. I did like I did an acrylic painting with like gold acrylics for Cain Velasquez. I did a portrait of him. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
and then it just it was like such an incredible way to learn,
Yeah.
so and develop the style.
Pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty early on, it felt like you knew you were onto something. You were fortunate that when you did that first Tumblr post, right, it got put on other platforms. Give us a timeline, like how much time went from Tumblr post to Vice giving you, and that call to come on board.
Like right away, like a month or so. Because so I think
Holy, wow,
it was like because it was some through Twitter something like because
insane.
same with the Mark Hunt. Somebody added Mark Hunt. Boom, he puts it on it. And we connected with the Vice guy over a bigger MMA Twitter personality. Adding them or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Especially in 2014 or whenever that was, 2015. Like I think even the MMA editorial space online was even tighter. Because it was
okay,
so small. It was just a few. You know,
yeah.
I mean, the same guys who are around now, but a
But
lot.
yeah, exactly. Just much younger. That's insane. 1 month. Wow. So did you is there any fun story to that? Like were you putting off posting something on Tumblr? Like did that almost not happen? Or were you like, for sure that you knew you were gonna go down that route?
No, I mean, uh, yeah, right when I got the opportunity, I was just like, it was already in the vein of things I was experimenting with. So I was just immediately thinking, oh, what am I going to draw next? Like what kind of paint am I going to use this time? Like it took me, um, a couple illustrations to kind of not develop my style, but develop a lot of the techniques that kind of uh, are found in my works,
Yeah.
today. Um, but yeah, it was right away. It was right away.
That's really cool. The I had a question on I'm blinking out. What my question was still going to be on that experience. Oh yeah. So a theme that we're going to have as we talk about some of the projects and opportunities that have come up is I'm always fascinated with the was it a call? Was it an email? Was it a oh shit moment? Was it a celebratory moment? Some of that. So how did the Vice thing come about? And was that a big deal to you to get that phone call or email?
So I think, damn, I'm forgetting which one, if it was the first one or second one, but I think maybe it was more the second. So the first one I did was like I told you, I was in the, I'm into Street Fighter. I have like the Street Fighter, the Art of Street Fighter books. I was like, I want to do like one of those collages of all the fighters, like in
Hmm.
Street Fighter, but with all the UFC champions. So I did one of those, and that kind of went. But I think the next one I did, which was like a fan art of it was Roy Nelson and Mark Hunt. So Mark Hunt is my guy, especially after he posted my thing. I was like, oh, that's my guy. Dana White is somebody, like in the MMA thing, tagged Dana White in it, and he Instagrammed it and Twitter posted it. A fan made this, boom, and I was like, whoa, that was like huge. I was just like,
That's huge.
I was like, oh my god! And then I think that same one was when Mark Hunt, posted, it on his profile picture, and it might have been that one where I got the vice call. So
Okay.
it was all like that whole. I was just like, like like that, because it's like it's one thing when that was kind of my first taste of um, all the guys that you're watching. You're starting to communicate with them online. You're like,
Yeah,
whoa.
it's happening. It's taking off.
Yeah. So
All right. So now I want you to talk to us about George Pratt. You credit him for your art style. I'd like to know how he made his mark on you.
oh yeah, mark is a good word because he's a master of mark making. So I think before George Pratt, I felt like art was very, to me, it was very academic in that these are the ways to draw. Like you draw with charcoal pencil, the pencil drawing. You do oil painting. And this is like how you do it. You do
Hmm.
like layers and stuff like that. But um, George Pratt was all about mark making because he's an illustrator. He was an illustrator and comic book artist also, but not in the way you might think, more like a painter. But he could
Okay.
also with ink and stuff like that. But his whole thing was capturing an expression quickly. So it doesn't matter, you're not like when you're trying to capture a vision quickly, you're kind of doing whatever you can to create the image in as least amount of strokes as possible. You know, as in like, and that kind of cuts away a lot of the thinking about like constructing or starting. Where do I start with like the eyeball or whatever? It's like if you have an image, you want to capture you want to put the image out. You want to capture emotion. How do you do it? Like, and he would use all kinds of things. He would be like, one of his philosophies was, uh, and one of the ways he trained you as an illustrator was we would do like 20 20-second poses, where we'd have a figure and we do it in 20 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes. So it's like when you have 20 seconds, you kind of distill what is the most important
Hmm.
information that I can put down quickly. And when you do that, you have a different energy than if you're starting and you're like, I have forever on this. Then maybe you'll start, very small, and then, but when you have the time crunch and all that, you kind of develop an energy. And I was kind of into that because that, like I said, I was in the comic books, video games, stuff like that. So it's all about the impact, the splash pages. So
That's exactly the word impact is what was coming to mind when you were saying 20 seconds. I'm like, just
yeah,
by the nature of wanting to get it done so fast, it feels like you're gonna almost hit the canvas in a way
yeah,
where there's
yeah,
impact to it.
yeah. And what what it teaches you to do is really simplify what you're trying to get across.
Hmm.
What are the main, like if it's a figure, what are the main shadows and shapes that's going to get that across? And that is also that becomes the most important details, anyways.
Yeah.
So it's like it's you make one stroke that defines the back, the leg, boom, 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 and yeah, it's so basically, I'm kind of rambling, but
Yeah.
uh, he would use all kinds of he would also experiment with all kinds of tools,
I
to
heard that.
make
Yeah.
more interesting marks. So he was the one where using rollers, different random things from Home Depot, just different to make more expressive marks. Um, and yeah, I took a lot from that. I took a lot from that. Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea would be to get you comfortable with doing something with 20 seconds a minute. And then once you understood what it meant to do that, then you can take an hour doing something, but you now know how to go about it.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
okay. Got it. And do you stay in touch with him often? What does he think about what you've been able to do so far?
Nah, he's a busy guy. So he's still a professor. So he's just one of those guys that he's always done projects as an illustrator. Like
Hmm.
I think he does the random painted comic book cover. He did his own like 4 issue painted Wolverine miniseries like in the '90s. Um, but no, he teaches in Florida now, and
Okay.
yeah, I mean, yeah, so yeah,
Got it. All right. So I'm gonna read a quote to you that you said in the past, which I reacted to in a way where I was like, "That I don't know if you knew what you said when you said it." So it's important to be in a flow state when you're putting pen to paper, and that's because you're working with tools that can exaggerate emotions. Now, this is the part that really stood out to me. So it's important for each of your marks to be purposeful and have intent. So I felt that last sentence is profound because it's important for each of your marks to be purposeful and have intent. I'm curious if you carry that type of philosophy in your day to day life of just always being purposeful and intentional about what you do, and where that, what I call doer mind state, comes from.
okay. Well, you know what? I think it definitely applies to the art because the type of art that I like to make um, has a certain kind of energy and boldness um, that kind of comes with conf- confidence or conviction in your brushstrokes and stuff like that. And I do think that comes in to everyday life because it's kind of I guess relating it to art it kind of cuts away the fat. It makes you think about, makes you prioritize what's important, and I think yeah, it allows you to maybe make the most important moves and make the best out of what you're trying to achieve. I guess.
Yeah, yeah, no, and and like that's kind of why it hit me. I operate with the goal to always be purposeful and intentional. But one thing I will say is because I'm not an artist in the traditional sense, right? I think it's easier for me to put less weight on trying to strive for perfection and more to be marginally better every day. Which is a good pivot to then like asking you, given that you are an artist in the traditional sense,
Yeah.
right? How do you balance perfection in your artwork? Is it something that you believe you could attain and achieve, or do you know that it's going to be a difficult task, so you have to balance that?
Yeah, it's so I feel like it's deadlines that helps me balance it out. Yeah, like dude, um, so I always have this thing. Probably in the last couple days when I'm going to finish, I call the agony phase. I mean,
Okay.
I always have an agony phase. It's always like it'll be really fun when I start the sketches, and then I'm like trying to figure out like this one middle part until I have a sketch that I really like, and then I'm like,
Okay.
yes, I went over the first agony phase, and then this is the last agony phase where I'm like finishing it, and like I have to, it has to be done. It's like it has to be done, and that's it. And I have to
Yeah.
keep looking at it. I like, I scan it in. We do it and then I have it as JPEG on my phone. I'm like, oh damn it, and then I have to go change the whole thing again. But um, I think what's been helpful is starting out as an illustrator where you have the pressure of deadlines and it's like you got
Yeah.
to get it done. So it's like that thing where I guess like George Pratt, you got to think about what the most important things are and analyze. Boom, boom. I got to go do this, this, and this. Also, I think what's helped me a lot is doing street art, like
Okay.
murals, because that's definitely a time thing, and you can't just be like out there forever. So,
Yeah.
like, especially it's massive, so you have to think about. So, you know, actually, what I learned from doing street art is one thing I do is like before I start the work for the day is I kind of just look at it and then I just make notes of all the different things that I want to change, as opposed to like kind of just going up
Okay.
and just starting to paint everywhere. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because that's what I would have to do on doing big walls, because it's like
Hmm.
when I'm up there on the ladder and stuff, or the lift, I can't like see the whole thing anymore. So
Correct.
what I do is like I step back. I'm like, I gotta fix this, and I make a list, and then I like do it like a printer. Like, all right, now I'm on the top hand. Boom, I do this. I'm gonna fix this. Gonna
You
fix
take a
this. So,
picture of it as well for reference to have up there.
yeah, and I even take it a step further now with murals. Is I take a I take a picture and then I just draw over I mark it up in Photoshop
Okay,
and then I have that. I'm like, okay, I need to change this, change this, change this. So
that's a good approach as well.
yeah,
So, as a practitioner of martial arts, early in your career, you decide to start creating that fighter artwork. You post it on social. Vice gets to you. You start to produce artwork for their Fightland series. Talk to me about when you grab the UFC's attention.
yeah.
What was that first interaction of being commissioned to work with the UFC?
Well, so UFC reached out to me, but I feel like I was reaching out to the UFC through all the projects that I
Yeah,
did leading up to it.
that was
So
your resume.
yeah, yeah. So by the time UFC hit me up, I pretty much done everything possible that every other UFC related project possible. Like
Yeah,
I had done artwork for years for Reebok, which was the official and the only clothing sponsor of the UFC for
yeah,
years.
yeah.
So I was doing like I did Francis Ngannou's first walkout shirt. I did Izzy shirt. Like we were doing apparel. I was doing live painting at UFC events in the Reebok. Um, and,
Interesting. So you would
and
consider that a Reebok project that lets you work on some UFC related items, but it wasn't a direct commission from the UFC.
yeah, yeah, it was all Reebok. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I
Interesting.
get
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You could say it's Reebok. You could say it's UFC because it is for the UFC. But if you're asking like when somebody with a UFC email
Yeah.
hit me up,
Badge. Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So I did tons of stuff for Reebok. I mean, I did some. Those are fun days because that was also when I was starting out being like a professional artist. I feel like Reebok gave me my first like kind of really big, global brand. Um, they were my first like global client kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and they took me on we had some awesome adventures. Like UFC used to do this thing called the athletes retreat where they would fly out the whole roster to for like a weekend in Vegas, and they'd have like seminars. Like the weekend when I was there was Kobe was there giving us a seminar about like business, and
I
the
think I've heard of these. Yeah. They don't do these anymore, right?
Shark Tank was there the weekend.
Yeah.
So, like Reebok was a sponsor, so they just had like one time they just had me out there painting as like entertainment. Like I did like a two big MMA paintings,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was in the middle painting. I was like the only guy there that was not a fighter. That's not a UFC player. Um, and one time I was painting at the Reebok tent. They would have like a merch tent outside of the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, and it was during fight week. Sorry, International Fight Week,
Yep.
and it was like that's July Vegas. It was like 115 something like that, and my paint was like coagulating because we were outside. I was just like I was like, but they were like nobody's coming to this thing, because it was like maybe 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. and it was like the fights didn't start till like 8, so they're like nobody's coming. That's too hot. So
Yeah. Did
oh,
they let you just close it down early?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
we had a lot of these things. Like I went to yeah, we had a lot of these things. One time I was like painting at a Reebok store, and I was painting, and then when Ngannou was new, and he was like
Okay.
signing stuff, and I was just like painting right next to him, stuff like
Got
that.
it.
So
Got it.
we had a lot of cool things with Reebok, and so that was so I did Vice, right? So I did MMA
Yeah.
editorial stuff with Vice. I did apparel and live painting stuff, all kinds of stuff with Reebok. I did Conor McGregor artwork, key art for the UFC 4 video game. They
Wow.
did like they made it into ads, and
Okay.
uh, it was not for the actual, not in the game, but it was like for the game. I did,
Fight posters.
yeah, 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 posters. Just yeah, basically like yeah, everything that had to do with the UFC. And then I got hit up by the UFC apparel, so I did like a line of artwork for UFC apparel. Then it started building up in the UFC. Then I did artist series poster. I did a couple of those. Then I did um, the bigger artist series poster for me, which I made as a large scale painting. They commissioned as a large scale painting that we gave to Izzy.
Yep.
And then it all like kind of led up to like the 300 mural, and it was just like, so when I got that, I was like, I'm ready. I was like,
Yeah, you're ready. Yeah, you knew,
I was
you
like,
almost kind of had the expectation already.
yeah, I was like, I've been preparing for this. I was like, I'm the guy for this. I was like, you guys
I
want
love it.
300 mural? I was like, I'm ready. Yeah.
So I'm gonna table the 300 for now. I do want to get into it, excluding that project and thinking about all the other UFC stuff, whether it's the Reebok collaborations, the video game, the fight posters. Um, any fun, memorable moments that you can think of that like are just some that nobody's ever asked you about and they always stick out. You know.
Nobody's ever asked me about. Man,
I'm talking even like I didn't think this one, or like this one was so close on deadline that I needed to, get 50% of it done in the last day or whatever it is that really sticks out to you when you think of those moments.
oh well, I mean, one thing that just happened. So was my last artist series poster before the UFC 300 was for the MSG card last year, and this was supposed to
Mm.
be Bones Stipe.
Stipe, yeah.
Yeah, so I did the painting. Um, they loved it, and then me and my wife went on vacation to Italy. We're like, yeah, we did it. We're done. And then like a week before the fight, Bones tears his pec or whatever, and they were
Hmm.
like, I was in Italy, and they emailed me. They're like, "Is there any way we can make a change?" And I was like, "By this time." And it was just like, I was like, I can, I get back this day. I I can get back, paint new faces, and have everything else be the same, and then just like Photoshop it together. And yeah, if you guys are cool with that, then I can make that happen. So that's what happened. I came back. I painted a Yuri. I painted Alex or Alex.
Wow.
I just photoshopped it. I was like, I was like, boom, there it is. Yes.
That's fascinating. That is a big story, right? Like nobody would know that because we appreciated the artwork, right? Where us fans don't know that. We're just gonna take it and be like, that's a dope piece. But you
And
know that history behind it.
you know what? That happened to me also, but on a smaller scale with Vice, UFC 200. So
With
after
Jones and DC,
with
right?
Bones, yeah, same thing. So for that one, I had already been doing a couple things I've been doing it for a while, and for this one, we were like, oh, why don't we do 3 illustrations? I wanted to do a 200, like a big two with 2 fighters in it, because it was 3 main matchups, right? It was the headliners at the time were Bones, Cormier, uh, Mark
It's
Hunt,
like
Brock Lesnar,
Brock
and
Lesnar.
Keisha Tate, and Amanda Nunes. So I was gonna do Bones and Cormier inside the 2, and then the other guys in the 0 and the 0. So I did all these 3 paintings, and then like Bones pops, and I'm like I can't. And at that time I did run out of time. Like I couldn't just make a new one with. I think it was Anderson, but I
Yeah.
think that one was literally. I think Anderson jumped in like with 2 days
Yeah,
notice.
that was super short notice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was just like, I can't. I literally can't do that. I can't. So
Yeah. That's always tough though. Is it hard to say no? Because you almost like, you're like, this is the company that I want to do as much work as I can for.
yeah. Well, no. Well, for that one, it was for Vice, and yeah. I mean, I would have. I probably would have tried to do it if, I probably. I still had an advertising job back then, so
Okay.
I had to be a little. So that was also another lucky gig to have, because um, it was almost like whenever I could do it, then they'd be like, cool, and
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and like I said, there was no real concept. It wasn't like we need a specific illustration that talks about this story that just happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I would just do a painting of like a badass painting of Bones, and we're like, and then they'd have an article for John Jones, for his next fight. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
it, yeah,
Sonable, if I'm pronouncing that right, is it
yeah,
Sonable? Yeah,
Yeah.
an MMA apparel and equipment company. You've also done some fantastic work for them. For the likes of Max, which is this piece right here, right? That's
Yeah.
that artwork is sick. I was happy to get one of those. I
Yeah.
also saw in going down that rabbit hole that you did some work for Sugar. So speaking on Sugar, that's another athlete that you got to meet as well. Him along with Izzy. So tell me maybe about any behind the scene memories that you shared about those moments. Some of these I imagine might have, went by so quick, but if there's anything you can share about those, that'd be cool.
He's chill, dude. He's like, so I experienced this in the like 15 minutes that I met him, but he was just like totally just like a regular dude, like we were in this hotel room, and you know what? Um, so I went up to Boston. That was for his last fighting, his title fight against Aldro.
Yeah.
And when I met him in the hotel room, he was just like totally laid back, and you could understand because it's cutting week,
Hmm.
so he's probably like a little bit chill. And his hair wasn't all hooked up yet. And then when we came back for the fight, it's like he's a totally different person. He's like a superhero because first of all, it's like totally, and then he has the pink shorts and everything, or maybe he didn't have, he had the green shorts then, but it was almost like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, whatever, Bruce Banner Hulk thing.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
he like totally, and especially when he landed the cab, you're like, wow, this is like the dude that we were just hanging out in the hotel room like a couple days ago. Um, so yeah, he was really cool, and also my contact at Sandoval, Imran, who works with Sean a lot, is like he's totally like like a regular like chill dude, day to day, and then the Sugar Show was like a different side of him.
That's his other side. Yeah, yeah. Got it. Yeah, and I know they do quite a bit of Sean and his coach do quite a bit of promotion for like their products and whatnot. So I know they've probably been working for a while now.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? On the flip side, when I met Izzy, Izzy's like that guy. He's like a star, like
Just the
you can
entire
tell.
time.
Yeah, I mean, like he's like so charismatic. Like you can tell, like, oh, this guy's a star. Like even when he came in, he met me. He's like, oh my guy, just like he knew exactly what to say,
Yeah.
make you feel cool. You feel cool being around him. Not that Sean didn't, but that's kind of like how Izzy is.
Yeah.
He portrays himself, but that's kind of how he is. In real life too. Just chill, like awesome, like high energy. Just really cool, like a real cool star guy.
Yeah. Have you blessed him with a follow back on Instagram, or are you gonna
Yeah,
make
no,
him
of
work for
course.
that?
Oh, yeah, right, of course. Yeah, no. Actually, we had been IG friends before he got into UFC. Actually,
Interesting. So he was a fan of your work.
yeah. I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say, right? He liked what you were putting out there, so he wanted to follow it.
Yeah. We're mutual fans.
Yeah, I have a fun story about Izzy that happened maybe like 3 weeks ago. So I'm telling a client of ours about this channel. It randomly came up, right? I was like, oh well, yeah. I go, oh, it was around 300 because I said this entire weekend I'm basically muting everybody and I'm just gonna sit down for 8 hours and watch this big monumental UFC 300 card. She goes, oh, it's funny. She's like, I used to be roommates with Izzy. And I was
Whoa.
just like, that's like the randomest thing because if you look at her, you would never ever think that, right? And so
Okay.
it turns out that she was dating one of Izzy's close friends that during the pandemic they all had to room together when everything was locked down. And so she got to know him over the course of like 6 months and is on a text basis with him. And she's like, yeah, like I texted with him like 2 weeks ago. She's like,
Oh,
I can introduce you if you want. I was like, I'm definitely take you up on that. I go when the time is right. I was like, but that's just such a random, like story
yeah.
to stumble upon. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's funny when you say he's like on text, but like the other thing with Izzy is like, even like I said, we were IG friends before he was in the UFC. Even
Yeah.
as it's gotten bigger and bigger, like I'll post like a random painting, and then it's like liked by Izzy by Stylman. Really cool, like just
You're
he's like
like,
still on IG doing stuff,
he's
or
still
that's
on there.
that's what I think. I don't know. Maybe it's
Yeah.
something you're just like, oh, cool.
That's dope. It goes a long way though. That's really cool. All right, so now I want to jump into a monumental moment for us fans, specifically one for you as an artist, right? How did you feel to have your artwork showcased throughout UFC 300? They did a video piece on it too, which I thought was really really well edited.
Yeah.
Tell me what that feeling was, and also that initial phone call. Was it an email, right? That experience.
Yeah, so it was email, and like everything with the UFC, it's fast, and it's good because I'm
Bless
used to it, but
you.
especially with the UFC, it's fast because especially their stuff's always changing, and they have a card every. So like out of all the like kind of big corporations, they got to move fast, and so it was kind of like I had a lot of pressure time wise, but I feel like because I was moving so fast, I didn't have too much time to overthink everything.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, they hit me up for the mural. The main idea was they wanted it as the intro to their countdown episode. So when they're talking about all the different fighters, they're talking about the belts. It's all in this one mural that they can kind of point to, and then when they have the reveal of the intro, it's like all of it's in one. Like
Hmm.
UFC 300, like with a mural. So I wanted this composition to be kind of like an explosion of all that. Like, it's not just like this guy versus this guy and this guy. It's just like an explode. Like all these guys are there. Um, so I mean, yeah, it was like a dream project. Like, and what was so weird was it probably was the project that went the smoothest out of like all the big
Okay.
projects I've ever had. Like, especially a mural project. So um, first of all, the timing was so fast. Like it was like they hit me up. I presented sketches like a day or two later. Revision, boom,
But what
and
is
then
so? How much time did you have? So UFC 300, right? It's going to happen on a Saturday. Do you have a month ahead? Is it? Is
well,
it like how? What was the timeline?
so it was a little bit faster than like the other stuff because I mean a little bit more time because usually when I do like the artist series posters and stuff, the delivery date, they'll hit me up maybe 3 weeks before the fight because they're
Okay.
still trying to get stuff together, and then I have to be like, depending on what I'm working on, I have to be like, okay, I gotta work, do sketches,
Yeah.
boom, and you deliver it like a week and a half or something before. But this one, they wanted because it was for the countdown.
Mm-hmm.
The countdown aired 2 weeks before 300, so they needed it, like at least a week before that. So yeah, I had this done about a month before 300.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. Like like that bones thing. I had like they wanted 6 guys on the mural. I was like, oh my god. I was like,
Here we go again.
I hope nobody stubs their toes. But yeah, so everything went perfect. It was just like amazing. Like um, so everything got approved quickly. One thing that's pretty awesome working with the UFC is I feel like they don't have like a giant chain of like approvals. Um, like I got hired to do a mural, a Nike mural at a Jordan store in China,
Hmm.
and I was every round of sketches had to go through um, the design studio, and then Nike China's advertising agency that had to go to like Nike China that had to go to Nike
There was a lot
Portland,
of chains
and
of
then get
approval
approved
that
by
you.
Jordan.
Oh,
So it was
jeez.
just like tons and tons. But this one was like the guy that at the UFC that was like producing the videos, like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah.
approved, approved. It's fast. So it happened so fast, and then um, I felt like I was like kind of like living this UFC video game. Like I was out in Vegas. We were at the warehouse. They let me work out at the PI. In the mornings. I was just like like doing like flat pulls and stuff. Just at the I was like eating, like lunchtime. I'm at the cafeteria. There's like Whaley. I'm like,
That's what I
whoa.
was about to say. You're probably running into the athletes there. Yeah.
Just like painting in the warehouse. And then, so one thing was this was the quickest mural timeline I've ever had. So usually murals always, like 5 or 6 days,
Hmm.
like, and that's taking a long time, especially for a mural. Like,
Okay.
especially guys that are like all spray and have different, maybe less figurative styles. They'll bomb it in like an hour to like a day or
Yeah,
2 days.
yeah.
I already take kind of a long time, but because they had a whole film crew and like equipment and stuff, they were like, "Can you get it done in 4 days?" And this was the most portraits I've done in one mural too, 6 portraits. And those always take a long time because that's kind of the hardest thing, right? Like a likeness that I want to create in my style that has the energy, has the texture, has the grittiness, but it's got to kind of look like them, So that's the
Correct.
hardest thing, It's not like a character, a made up character where there's some room for. So, anyways, but I think because of that, I made a super tight sketch. Like I made sure like I solved all the problems on my sketch, and then the other advantage was we work in a warehouse, so I always project the murals.
Yeah,
But,
onto it.
yeah, but on the street, like sometimes it's just you can just get the line. You got to work fast because uh, uh, yeah, when you're on the street, you got to work at night. That you don't know who's there. You're putting the projector like across the street. People walk, so
Okay.
you're just going fast. But because this was in the UFC warehouse, we were like, okay, I solved all the problems that like the lighting things and all the issues that I wanted on this sketch. I like did all the prep, so we were able to just like turn it on and just like really get it tight. Like way tighter than I ever had. So it was almost like I got as much from the sketch as as I ever had been able to translate onto the wall.
Yeah.
And it just went like I said perfectly. It was just like we were in a closed off environment. There's no people walking around. So we're just painting. The one thing was it was like a little bit pressure because there's like a full film crew. Like the embedded guy. Like I mean, the countdown guys just like a crane that
Yeah.
every time they're like, can we do the 300 and paint it and walk away?
Yeah.
There's some like sleeping I had to do and stuff like that. But besides that, it's just like I was surprised how fast and efficient everything went. Um, Something always goes wrong, something always
Yeah.
goes wrong, especially murals. Like it rains one day, or we forgot this kind of paint, the lift doesn't work or something like that. But just everything went perfect, and then
Yeah.
nobody got injured. It was just like
That's the big one that you have no control about at all, or even the UFC, right? It's like,
yeah. So um,
the-
yeah, and UFC loved it, and yeah, it was perfect. And
is
then even
that a piece? And I'll let you finish that. Is that a piece that you feel 100% okay with? Like, even
yeah,
though it
oh
was
yeah,
rushed?
that's the
Yeah.
other thing. I was like by the day 3, I was like, I like it. I was like, it's
I
good.
like it.
Right. Yeah, you're like, I did it because like a lot of times, like I kind of like have a little terror of stepping away from the wall at the end of the day because I'm like, okay, when I step back, I've been working all day on this. Am I gonna hate it or not? And I was like, yeah, cool. And I even had a couple. I had enough time to do a couple rounds of like my Photoshop revisions, like I was talking about. Like I take a picture, I put it in Photoshop, and then so I can look at it, like really small and be like, oh, I need to change this and that. Um, and then even with a couple cycles of that, I was like, yeah, I was like, we did it. So
That's so
yeah,
awesome.
like that's the other thing. I was like happy with it, and even how they used it was so cool. Like so now it's gonna be like it's at the Apex Center, the mural, and then they used it as like on all the new screens for like the lead up show. With
Okay.
like DC and Laura Sanko and Weidman and all those guys, and then they use it on the weigh-ins. They had it like as a big, I think projection, or maybe it was like on a screen above the weigh-ins.
I think it was on the screen. Yeah, yeah.
As the screen, and then they had it backstage. So like everybody, there's all these like Getty images, or from the UFC photographer, of all the like stars like pose. It's like kind of
That's
like
dope.
when they have the like film premieres and they have that like.
Hmm.
It's kind of like they use it for that too. They're just awesome. It's just like yeah, I mean
Yeah,
like
kudos to the UFC team, right, for having knowing what works. I think they've done this enough times where you were surprised to walk into a situation where they had a warehouse for you that takes a lot of like your concerns of doing murals in the street away. They're professional about it, so they're like letting you kind of flow with what you need to. I bet the crew was there and they were interrupting here and there, but it was more minimal and to the process than not. And
Yeah.
it's really good that they're also putting it now somewhere. They have it. It's going to be a monumental piece that they have. Did all the fighters sign it? Is that like something that they went for as well, or does that take away from it? Would you kind of be hurt if it has
No,
any
I,
signatures?
no, I don't think they signed it. But also, it's like a 30-foot mural, so I feel like they'd have to sign really big for you to, for you to see it. Um, but no, I don't think the fighter signed it. Yeah.
Got it. And I've heard that you, I think it's called like, you design the lighting by doing your own references, and so you're like you have your wife taking pictures of you,
Yeah.
doing karate angles and whatnot. Did you do some of that for this?
Always, all the
Always. It's always
always,
okay.
yeah, every body reference. I mean, I had some here where there was just portraits, like the Behera shouting and stuff like that. But still, I always shoot, yeah, for everything.
Interesting. Tell
Because
folks about that. Tell folks about what that is.
oh yeah, so this is actually from George Pratt too, because like one thing, especially if you're trying to create a representational painting, like figurative, not this is like excluding like cartooning and stuff where it's like very stylized. But if you're trying to have like a certain level of realism, um, something figurative, George Pratt was like, you got to design your own references because like there's a lot of information that you can design based on the way that you light a reference. So, like for example, like I was saying with the 20-minute gestural drawings and stuff like that.
Mm.
When a figure is lit and there's like like nice shadows, very defined shadows, like it's easier to paint because those shadows define more of the figure
Mhm.
as opposed to like you right now in your even lighting. There's very little shadows, so you have to do a lot of line work. There's not, but
Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, in a lot of my artwork, I try to have like really dramatic lighting. Not only is it more descriptive, there's more of an impact. Like and what I mean with dramatic lighting is like it's usually like from above or somewhere where there's like strong shadows on one side, and then there's like there's a clear lights and darks. And then when you shoot your own references, you can also design the lights and darks on the page because that's kind of what makes up a composition. The How the lights and darks play around the page.
Yeah.
That kind of creates the pattern. Um, so when I'm shooting the references, um, so my process is I come up with the sketches small, like by myself, like kind of like out of my head, right?
Yeah.
And then when I have like basic shapes, like oh this kind of angle versus that kind of angle, then I'll shoot my own references to kind of define the lights and the darks, and that kind of
Yeah.
takes it to the next level of specificity, you know. Um, so yeah, so I do that for every painting I do, and especially and what else? What else? Also, what I found, doing MMA artwork is like, uh, it's just messy in the ring. Like very rarely do you get like a perfect kind of punch angle or a
Correct.
perfect kick angle. It's always like because they're really fighting. Like they're getting punched while they're kicking.
Correct.
It's like a weird angle. So it's like to really get the kind of dramatic angle or a certain kind of composition that I want, you got to design it, and then I find, of course, space references to match.
Yep. Yep. So somewhere in your photo reel, I have a picture of you like this, right?
Oh yeah, oh my god, if you look through my iPhone, it's just a picture of me and my wife, like usually in our underwear. Yeah, yeah, I got this one. I got yeah, all of them.
That's
You know,
you have the chama as
not
well.
yet, not yet, but yeah, that's
Oh,
just
we
by,
got
that might
spoiler.
yeah, yeah.
All right, we'll touch on that. So I want to get to some community questions. Folks found out that you were going to be on the show. Excited. A lot of people, follow your work in this community, as you know. So I have 4 questions for you here. So the first one comes to us from Zach over at Box Alarm Trading. He said, "What is your favorite UFC related piece that you've made to date?"
Favorite UFC? You know what? I think it's tied up. I think it's the Izzy one, just because. First of all, that year, which is I guess a year and a half ago, was the first time I'd really been experimenting with collage and paint pours. So um, that's kind of the new techniques that I've been delving into over the past couple of years, which is basically I make multiple paintings, um, and I can and then I cut them out and put them together. And what that allows me to do is get a little bit wilder with the application of the paint
Hmm.
because I'm not worried about affecting the other pieces.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like that was so with that one, that was all, pretty much maybe like the second or third piece that I was doing that way, where I do a painting of Izzy, I can get crazy, and then I cut it out, and then I do a painting of this guy, and then I do crazy paint pours. I do like 20 paint pours, and then I find the paint pour that has the coolest energy that fits together with this, and then when I put it together, the juxtapositions are crazy. So that was the first, so that's one reason. The second reason is it was the subject matter, Izzy
Yeah, of course.
and like I said, Izzy and I had been IG friends for a while, and then so yeah, and then the third reason I guess is because we got to gift to him in person, and yeah, I mean, I like how it came out. I like the composition. I like for me the paint pours and the collaging was very fresh at the time, and then we got to meet Izzy, and it was dope.
Second question comes to us from Jay Money over at UFC Card Fiend, and he wants to know, how do you go about pricing such a commission as the UFC 300 mural? Is it a budget that the UFC presents, or is it a price that you send over? And of course, you don't got to go into the numbers, just like overall high level. How does that work from a business perspective?
Man, it's hard, dude. So it's luckily my secret weapon is my wife, who's still in advertising and she's a producer.
Hmm.
So she doesn't work with too many illustrators, but always a lot of photographers, directors, and she's in the advertising game. So she's a little bit more familiar with budgets than a normal person. I mean, I would say a lot more familiar. So
Yeah, I would say
um,
so too.
it's it's always tricky. We always break it down. Obviously we're trying to get what we can get. Um,
Of course.
um, a lot of times it's what the usage is. Is it just going to be a graphic or like an editorial thing? Like when I was doing the Vice stuff, you
Hmm.
know, first of all, I was starting out and um, so money wasn't really an issue, but um, because I still had a job. But you know what it is? It's like for an online, it's an illustration for an online article that's going to be up on a website for like a couple days. So
Yeah.
like you can kind of infer like what the budget would be for that because they got to go for, and then or is it for like apparel where you know
Hmm.
it, it's for a global apparel company like so it's kind of like the different industries kind of have I guess as I've worked in the different industries, you kind of figure out what the standard is, sort of.
Yeah.
But it's always kind of like a crapshoot, Like one one kind of example is when I actually got hired by an ad agency to do paintings for Game of Thrones
Hmm.
uh, for its final season, right? So like that was very tricky to pitch because on one hand you're like, oh, Game of Thrones is the biggest thing now, the biggest thing that's happening, and it's going to be advertising for the last season. So it's like, oh, we got to, we're going to crank it up, we're going to ask for this and that. But then
On the
what?
opposite end.
It's not the main image that's going to be in Times Square. They wanted these paintings for an activation that um, is kind of like a side advertising, or they had a massive advertising plan. Obviously, they had
Hmm.
like crazy social media things and everything. But so then you balance that, and then the other thing is when somebody that big is reaching out to you, they also reached out to like three other illustrators.
Yeah.
Or
You're competing. So
yeah,
you're competing. Yeah.
yeah. So you pretty much have to tell them what you're willing to do it for, and then sometimes they won't get back to you. So it's like you're kind of balancing all these things. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, this is my shot. You can't just be like, oh, I want this, and they're like, oh, that's too high. And then okay, can we do this? It's like they might not even get back to you.
It's not a Shark Tank where you're gonna,
No,
yeah, exactly. So
no,
you said the word pitch is what came to mind. It sounds like you
yeah,
have to pitch yourself, and you have to be mindful knowing that you have competition, that you
yeah.
don't go too high because they might just not get back to you via email.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
but luckily, by the time I got to the UFC, I've had 7 or 8 years of experience of doing a bunch of different things, and we got it to work. I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
we got
Got it.
something that we were both happy with. I think
So
so.
if any artists listen to this and you're not sure about what to price, just reach out to his wife, and she'll
Yeah,
help
yeah.
you out. She'll
No, man, and,
consult you
and you
on
know
that.
what? A lot of times it also depends on like how cool the project is and like how busy I am or like how many um, yeah, being an artist is it's like everything is and then not to mention the gallery world. Like I've been a commercial artist for 8 years, but I've only been in the gallery world for like about 3 years.
Mhm.
Just kind of during COVID, a gallery hit me up, and so now I actually have my third solo show coming up next month. But that pricing is totally different. It's like that, because that's an audience for that's a totally different audience. It's not like art directors and big brands. It's like people who are want to get your stuff and they're going to put it in their home or
In
they're
their home.
collecting stuff. So doing that was almost like not starting over, but kind of like you have to start at a certain point, for
Yeah.
paintings because it's a different thing. So um, I think with art, there's like really no one way. There's no
Yeah.
like real guide. Like they do have industry illustrator like guidebooks,
Okay.
but it's really it's hard. It's hard when you're in an industry when that so many people want to do the job that you're doing. Anything like sports or like UFC,
Yeah.
like people complain about fighter pain stuff, but it's hard to fight against that because there's so many people who just want to fight, who want to do it.
Right.
So it's like being an artist. Like
There's
there's
that
always
next
like a
guy that's
younger,
willing to do it for free, or
yeah, yeah,
basically, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Like there's another kid that also has a real job, but he's just doing it on the side and he just wants to get exposure. So
Hmm.
it's always, so there's always
That
something.
balance. Yeah, that balance. And honestly, when you started going into that insight, I love your answer to that, because the complexity to price UFC 300, where what it means to their
Yeah,
sport and what they are, that it's a piece that could really have legs to it and run for a while, and they can use it in multiple ways. I never even thought like you might also in the details of your contract say like, it can't be used for apparel, or it can, and this is how it can be used, or it can't, right? Like that there's so much of that goes into it that I bet even with your wife's help, it wasn't an easy one to price.
no, because you're like, oh, we're doing, a big mural for the UFC, and like, this is the biggest, so we got it. But then you're like,
Yeah.
but then the other part of my brain is like, I have to do this no matter what. If I'm not
Correct.
of 300 and they go to someone else, I'm gonna hate myself. So it's like
Hmm.
it's like the angel and the devil. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, but it's such a big thing to have on your resume. So I hope you got what, obviously you're happy with and above that. But even if, you knew that it was more a long-term play, hey, like that's also something that I think most folks have to know when to play that card when it's
yeah,
such a big name like that. I mean, you take that opportunity, and then in perpetuity you make back,
yeah, yeah,
from it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
all right, third question comes over from Luke at the MMA Love podcast. He says, "Are there strict guidelines or rules to abide by when working with a corporation like the UFC? And what department at the UFC is the one reaching out, or is it Dana White emailing you?"
No, no, it's not Dana White. And I feel like the number one question that people ask me was like, "Did Dana come by when you were doing the mural?" And he didn't. And every day they were like, "Dana's gonna come. That's we showed him the thing. He loves it. He's gonna come by today." And we're like, "Oh, cool." And then every
And it
day he
never
just
did. He's
yeah
so
he just
busy.
I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
I'm in the warehouse.
Just come to the warehouse. Come on,
Yeah,
I'm here.
out. So a little bit longer at the cafe, being like, oh, where's it? But it was cool. Uh, so the question was, who reached out? Oh, wait,
Yeah,
sorry, what was
guidelines. Yeah, strict guidelines to abide by from the UFC, and also who reaches out in a situation like this. What team is that?
So I guess the second question is easier. Uh, the people that reached out to me for this one was specifically the production team for the countdown, which
Okay,
is it's all in house, which is so amazing. UFC is such an amazing company because they they really run a tight ship. Like everything is in their house. Like they control their apparel and the graphics. They have their own, like the promotion, like the countdown, the
yep.
embedded, and it's all like a tight crew.
Hmm.
So they're like, and I think that that's just like the way to do it with something like this, where cards are happening every week, and there's fighters in and out, people are dropping out. It's like I couldn't imagine if you were like a more traditional company like the
Changing
brand I'm working
crews.
like yeah, you have like an external advertising agency, they have an external videographer and directors that they're hiring and stuff like that. I feel like that, so in one way it's very efficient at the UFC. Rules, I don't think there's any specific rules with the UFC. I think just rules in general of being a freelance artist. Probably the most important thing is like just being professional, like being on time and stuff like that. Especially with the UFC, it's like um, you want to keep them in the loop, and I mean that's just kind of like basic.
Basic things. Yeah, communicate well, be on time.
Yeah, being a professional guy.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, yeah, yeah,
Okay, no, that helps. That
yeah.
helps. I know we're running long, so I want to be mindful of your time. One more question. Joe over at Joe's Card Stash, his question is, what has your experience been like working on with a trading cards company like Topps? Because we also have that drop that just happened. There's 300 of those out there. I'm still waiting to get my hands on one, but yeah, let us know.
Well, I actually there's no story there because I don't work with them. It's basically that I think they have a deal with the UFC where the
Correct.
artist series posters or the artwork that I make for the artist series posters get made into Topps cards. So I actually
It's a
don't
collateral
have
piece of your
contact.
deal. Is that the way it works
Yeah,
basically?
yeah.
Okay.
It's always like a buyout. So when we do the artwork for the UFC, they use it for apparel. I guess they use it for cards, um, stuff like that. So yeah, unfortunately,
Interesting.
I don't have a cool like trading card story.
But that's insightful though, just for folks that want to know, because we wouldn't have otherwise known that. We would have thought Tops is like emailing you and wanting to get a few ideas off of the work that you did, and but it's a little bit more simple than that. So all right, thank you to the community for asking those. Thank you for answering those. Very recently, you had a Bloodsport drop. That's another huge film that I grew up on as a child. Tell us about that project, and also I think that's a perfect one to speak on the what you were mentioning about the Izzy design, where it's a new design that you're using, where it's cutouts and whatnot. This is that concept, right?
Yeah. So
Perfect.
like everything I've been making this past year has been kind of like collage, sprays and stuff like that. So, um, uh, I guess for people who don't know, the alternative movie poster scene is something that's kind of been building up. I would say over the last 15 years or even longer, where um, different companies will hire artists to create new versions of cult classic films. So probably um, the film with the most alternative movie posters are like Star Wars, something like that. Like if you Google Star Wars posters, it's like a billion, but they're not the
Yeah.
ones, the original, but they'll be like different takes. So this company Mondo, which is kind of like they pretty much pioneered it, hit me up to do the Bloodsport poster, and um, I mean, I was super psyched because I've always been a fan of Mondo and alternative movie posters because
Okay.
it's like the zone of illustration that I'm into, which is um, stylized but um, has a little bit more time put into it than maybe like a regular comic book or editorial illustration because it's like a movie poster. So it's kind of like kind of like a subset of illustration that I've kind of always been into. And yeah, when they hit me up for Bloodsport, I was like, yes. I was like, that's the one that I can do. It's like the 300. I was like, I'm the guy for that one.
Yeah.
Like, um, Bloodsport is the UFC basically.
Yeah. The
That's like
Kumite.
the ultimate tournament of. So I was like, I know how to do this. I was like, I know how to do one-on-one guys. Um, like that was one of the films that I remember watching on TV all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I think maybe I even watched it more than Rocky. I don't know, but
Yeah, I would say so. That's me for sure. Yeah, it's one
yeah,
of my
yeah.
favorites.
So, uh, yeah, I mean, what's weird is it was like a 300. It was almost went like perfect. Like, I said the sketches, they loved it, and then just did the painting, and yeah, so yeah, and Mondo's such an insane powerhouse of like they have such an insane fan base that thing sold out
It
like
sold out in minutes, right?
yeah,
I mean,
so
yeah.
it was before I even got to post about it because they told me we're gonna drop it, this time CT, and I thought CT was like an hour later.
Yeah.
So I was doing my Instagram post, and then I posted it, and I saw that they had already posted. I was like, oh snap, it's already sold out. So I had to like edit my Instagram post because it's already sold out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it sold out quick. By the time I went on to try to get one, sold out. And that was minutes in. I was like,
yeah,
wait,
yeah,
what
yeah.
did I miss here? And that's the power of the audience that they,
Oh yeah,
tailored to. So that's dope. I didn't know that was what they do and that's their
oh
backstory.
yeah.
So that's really cool. So even though we know that there's tight deadlines for projects, something like this, did that come about like after 300,
Oh.
and then, or was it something already locked in from before you got your work done and then it's on them for like, when the right release date is for something like that?
Yeah, so alternative movie posters is kind of they have long timelines. One because obviously they're for movies that already came out, and
Hmm.
so um, there's often uh, there's often troubles with licensing because like you're dealing with maybe new movie studios or old movie studios that have different character likeness contracts.
Yeah.
So this one had to go to Van Damme's people, like all the
Yeah.
way there. So they reached out to me maybe in November, something like that, and I finished the painting
Wow.
in January. Um,
Wow. So you've been sitting on this one for a while.
yeah. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it took it didn't take forever to get approved. Maybe it took like a month or so to get approved, and then they have to get it printed. It's like
Correct.
so. This is not just like a regular poster or something. Mondo does usually screen prints. I mean, they'll occasionally do G plays with screen prints, where it's basically they separate the colors into different layers, and it's they make different screens and put it together. So
Yeah.
when you look at the paper, it's a more involved process, I guess. So
Yeah, it
all
doesn't
that,
feel like you're buying a poster from Amazon. It's you feel the
yeah,
quality that you're paying for on it.
yeah. So it's a longer process. So I guess even though I finished in January, we just dropped it last week or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So
2 weeks ago. Man, I mean, I think it's gonna be cool to see, what Bloodsport shrines or collectors corners pop up with them now. Talking collectors, are you a collector of anything?
yeah, so I am, but because I've lived in New York City for the past like 15 years. So actually now I lived in New York City for like 15 years until last year, and now
Yeah.
I'm in a house about 30 minutes from the city.
Okay.
I'm still in New York. I'm in Rockland County, but living in an apartment has, I feel like, been a blessing and a curse because it just you have to keep it tight. I can't buy everything. Like
Yeah.
I'm a huge, like I said, I'm into all that stuff. Into like
Comic
toys.
books. Yeah.
So I go to New York Comic Con every year,
Dope.
ever since I moved to New York City. But I think what I collect the most are like comics, because
Comics. Okay.
it's the smallest thing that I can collect. I have like these figures by my guy's plastic cell. That's just like a Rory and
Oh,
Michael Jackson.
dope.
But so basically, if you look at Rogan's desk, all those. the good figures that are on there are plastic cell figures. He
Very
made like
cool.
we had an Izzy one. They made he made actually made they made an official Joe Rogan one and like one of his dog or something.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, they're big. They're big fight fans. So I have all those. I actually did a Bruce Lee one, an official Bruce Lee one with them. So I
Okay.
have like all their stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I have like I buy random things. Like I had to buy this like stupid like Wolverine figure because so, stuff like that.
I'm
Um,
glad that Wolverine was your Marvel pick. He's such a dope character.
yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
also I have posters too, prints. I get
Prince.
prints from like my artist friends and artists that I'm into. So
Okay, very cool, very cool. And I guess at some point we're gonna see a background that has this much going on.
uh,
Once you're ready to showcase it, in a specific way.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I have like a poster wall downstairs, but I feel like it's like situated the wrong way from the desk. I don't know. I got to figure out my setup better.
No, you're good. You're good. All right, so let's get you out of here. So clearly, your resume to date is, nothing short of impressive. The way that I see it is, I can't help to feel that you're barely in like round one, maybe round two of a 5 round bout of your career.
Uh,
You still got a lot to go. What would you say is the next big milestone that you're chasing after? That could be within the next 12 months. That can be if you're someone that visualizes, 5 years out. I'll let you, pick that time frame.
um, yeah, I said the UFC 300 thing went so perfect. One thing, like scary thing that happened, like was that night when I finished it. I was just like, I couldn't go to sleep because I went so well, and I was just like, damn, is this the peak of my career? I'm like, did I just is this like the best thing I'll ever do? And then like so that was like a scary thought, like I was
Yeah.
just like laying in bed. I was like, this went so perfect, and it was for 300. I was like, and it's my UFC. And I was like, but I hope not. And so I would say the biggest thing for me is I feel like I've done a lot of stuff in the commercial world, but um, there's still like outside of MMA stuff
Of course.
that I'd be into. And I think for me, kind of the next thing I've been slowly building is the gallery career, which like I said, I have my third solo coming up next month in
Yes.
LA, and it was like it's like starting over a little bit, like in a totally different arena. But I like it because it gives me an excuse to create my own stuff, like my own characters and compositions and stuff like that, like from nothing, And
Yeah.
it's not like I only want to work like that, because I love the briefs that I get. Because what I love is both sides, Like I have a mural coming up for this video game company, which was like just a little bit more out of my wheelhouse than normal, but it just like forced me to, I had all these different things to do, like different kinds. So like that makes me think of new things.
Yeah.
Whereas because of constraints. Whereas when I have a gallery show, it's like totally wide open, whatever. So that's another way of like trying to push myself. So I guess trying to have uh, build that gallery career
Yeah. Do
is the next.
those for a career in that, is that two a year, three a year? I mean, do people have 12 a year, like once a month? Like what's the what so for someone that doesn't know the cadence of what is a lot or not, what does that look like?
I it really depends for the person. I've like I said, I only started like 3 years ago, and this is my
Hmm.
third one. So I've been doing like one a year, but um, I know artists that are full on. They only do gallery stuff, and they have like many shows a year, like because that's all they do. And maybe they have a style that allows them to create a certain thing, not over and over again, but like many kind of variations of it over and over again. Um, I'm like I feel like I'm a little bit of a unique situation because the artwork that I make commercially is like very much in line with my like fine art, my gallery work. So um, I think maybe me trying to do one a year is pretty good for the growth. And yeah, yeah. I mean, Yeah, I think the gallery is like a long-term thing. I think it's just
Okay.
like it's like a totally so.
That's exciting. I'm out in LA. I think I mentioned that to you. So my plan is to drop you a visit. I
Oh,
think it's
cool.
not just a day, right? You're there for a good extended amount of time. Why don't you tell folks, with the dates of that, the location, and any information that goes for, the gallery, that exhibit.
Well, so I'll actually only be there for the opening, but the
Okay.
opening is when they have the reception. It's like kind of like a little bit party on Saturday, June 22nd. It runs through July 7th, and it's at Gallery Nucleus in LA. Um, yeah, and it's called Versus. It's a body of work that I've been making over the past year and a half, and like we were talking about before, it delves into a lot of collage, paint pour, and spray techniques. Those are kind of like the techniques that I've really dived into with this body of work, and it draws from the energy of fighting games, MMA. I use that as inspiration to create characters and compositions that bring that energy. So and it's exciting. It's exciting to have those shows because I'm like I consider myself a pretty big introvert, so it's like
Really? Okay.
yeah, yeah. But most of my and most of my days I'm just like alone in the studio painting. So when I have these shows, it's kind of like I get to see a lot of people that I've only talked to online,
Mm-hmm.
or, all at once. So it's like always intense. It's like, but it's good. I feel like it's good to have. So
Is filming allowed at the exhibits?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. So I may reach out about trying to showcase that for the show as well.
That's
So you,
I didn't know you were in LA, so
yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
yeah, I definitely plan to be there. Using your admiration for Izzy, I want to set up the following question and then get you out of here. So after Izzy defeated Alex, he had that incredible post-fight interview, right, where he said, "You will never feel this level of happiness if you don't go for something in your life." To date, what is that moment in your life that you felt that level of joy that Izzy transmitted to all of us that night
So
on the mic?
no, I mean that was like when I decided to quit, to quit my job and just like go full time. Like, yeah, man, that was so powerful. See, that's what I'm talking about. Where he's that guy all the time. Like this is him right after he got in this crazy war. He like has
Being in the
that
moment. Yeah, yeah.
to say that perfect thing. That's what I'm saying. He's like the guy all the time. Um, yeah, man. I mean, it's just like every time, every project that I would get after I mean, I was getting cool projects before I decided to go full time, but
Yeah.
especially after, I'm just like, yes, I'm so happy, that we made that move because I was able to get this project, get that project, and basically it was everything. Like when Reebok hit me out, I was like, oh my god, we're with Reebok, like everlasting. I was like, oh my god, and then we're doing finally something for UFC. Now we're doing 300. It's just
That's
like
so
every
cool.
time I feel that.